From painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Today on Art Beat, we take a look at the 18th annual Frozen River Film Festival and sit down with Minnesota filmmakers Trenton, Raygor, and Nicholas Kapanke to talk about their film, The Last Dam, which was shown at this year's festival. The film takes an in-depth look at the 240-mile, 20-hour bicycle race known as the Day Across Minnesota. Although the race may be grueling, the film is an eye-opening look into the people and the impact this race has had since its first ride in 2021. I am Abby Hawkey. Join us as KQAL's Jiovani Bermudez talks with Trenton Raygor and Nicholas Kapanke, producer and director from the 2024 Frozen River Film Festival, today on Artbeat.
All right, I'm joined here over the phone by Trenton Raygor and Nicholas Kapanke, who were involved in the film The Last Dam, which presented during the Frozen River Film Festival. How are you all doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Doing great, thank you.
So let's start first things first. Why don't you give a recap of The Last Dam for our audience?
That sounds great. So The Last Dam explores sort of the social impact of the Day Across Minnesota, which is a 240-mile, 24-hour gravel bike race. Starts in Gary, South Dakota at midnight and finishes in Hager City, Wisconsin the following midnight or 24 hours later. Trenton, you can probably talk to a little bit more of the impact of the event and the number of people who have attempted it and sort of the rationale behind why you developed that course.
Sure. Yeah, the Day Across Minnesota is my own doing. So I'm a producer in the film of The Last Dam, but also the race director of the Day Across Minnesota. I developed the route Gary, South Dakota to Hager City, Wisconsin, which is a 240-mile, mostly gravel road route. I think it's only about few more than 10 miles of pavement on the entire course. So it's a lot of gravel. We have a pretty low finishing rate. It's a pretty challenging course, as you can imagine, and it takes a lot to push oneself through that. So the route itself, it's pretty remote, though it does visit some historical sites along the way. There are some interesting and notable historic landmarks from the War of 1862 included in the course. There's also Henderson, Minnesota, which is a place where part of a notable scene from Prince's film Purple Rain was filmed, and Northfield, Minnesota, or kind of around Northfield, Minnesota, which is where Jesse James botched his raid on the First National Bank. Yeah, and then ultimately ended up just across the river from Red Wing and Hager City, and also, little known fact, the place that we actually finishes on an island called Trenton Island. So that's another fun little fact about the event. Yeah.
All right, so that gives our audience a bit of a recap of it and a bit of the history, too. So you answered 4 of my questions right off the bat.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Well, let's dive into the film itself. What made you want to start filming for this? Or what made you want to start making this film?
Well, it's interesting. So we have another film that we made, released in 2019, called Delta of Spirit. And Delta of Spirit is also centered around the 2018 running of the dam. It's a very different film. I would say Delta Spirit is an adventure film focused on a gravel event, whereas The Last Dam is about a gravel event. And the impetus in 2018 to film that was one of the people who ended up being featured in the film, John Ingham, who is a professor emeritus at the U. He said, you guys should make a Banff film about the dam, referring to the Banff Mountain Film Festival. And Trenton and I had met before that. I'd filmed 1 or 2 Filthy 50s, but I hadn't really gotten into filming any sort of outdoor adventure type projects. And Trenton said, do you want to make a Banff film about the dam? And I'd worked on some films here in Minnesota with people who were trying to get them into Banff. Banff is sort of like the oldest and most prestigious outdoor film festival in the world, and it is no easy thing to say you're going to get something to Banff. And so I said, let's make the film, but there's no chance we're going to get into Banff. So we make the film. Lo and behold, we submit it, we get in. I literally got an email from Banff, and I walked away from my computer without looking at what it said, and I sat down and I just said, I don't want to see. But it said confidential, so I was kind of assuming we'd gotten in. So that sort of kicked off all of these sort of like adventure films that Trenton and I have made together. And then when it was announced that this would be the last dam, I thought we have to go back and do this again and make a sequel, if you will, which is no easy thing because Delta of Spirit had a lot of success. It's played all over the world, not unlike what The Last Dam has been able to do. So that was it. And of course, when you decide you're going to do it again, you have to go out and have a reason for your audience who has already seen Delta of Spirit to want to watch the new film. And so everything was a little different from our core approach was actually very much the same. We identified people who would be attempting the dam. Trenton is very good at saying, like, here's some people we should try to follow throughout the course, and there's different reasons why different people are selected, of course. We don't usually select people who are necessarily going to finish. That isn't like, the goal isn't to show, here's the top finishers. The goal is to show, here's a wide breadth of people from all walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, different occupations who attempt this thing, and then let's go follow them. And the hope is, of course, to inspire others to go and do this. And if not the dam, there are so many wonderful gravel events in Minnesota and all across the Midwest, and as we're seeing, throughout the country and around the world now, that we want to inspire people to go do it. So if you can't do 240 miles, then go do 25, go do 10, and then maybe do 25. Or I think as Trenton's dad, who's very much involved in the gravel scene, would like to say, look, if you can do 50, then you can do 100, and then 240 is just a little bit farther. So we want to inspire people to kind of go out there and have that mentality of like, let's go have some fun on a bike. And so that is kind of a long explanation of how we got started, and then sort of where this film took us compared to, say, what Delta Spirit did or some of the other ones we've made.
Well, you mentioned how you try to pick a diverse group of individuals, that you were just like, you had different reasons for choosing different people you chose to follow. Can you list some of the reasons why you chose to follow some of the people you did in the film?
Absolutely. Trenton, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the process that I think you'd share a list with me early on for both Delta Spirit and The Last Dam? And then we kind of would sit and talk through what the possibilities for each of those people were.
Yeah, for me, the process, so I should back up a bit. So I've been involved in the gravel cycling scene, and I know a lot of folks, people that I ride alongside in events, in different riding, cycling arenas, different clubs, all kinds of things. And I meet a lot of interesting people. And they're people like me, they're people like you. I always say they're kind of just your average person. They're not necessarily like the athletes you see on TV that you might associate with cycling, like the people from Tour de France, right? But they're really remarkable human beings when they get on a bicycle and in other parts of their lives as well. And they all have interesting stories. So I end up picking up pieces of those stories along the way, and I want to learn more about these people, and generally that kind of leads me to the creation of these lists. Sometimes it's pointing out a person who had an interesting experience, maybe at one of my events. So I'll name a person who I appreciate very, very much. Her name's Kapanke. On the first day across Minnesota, she dropped out in the first, I want to say 50 miles, because she came across a cat in the middle of an intersection, a lost stray cat. And so it's the middle of the night, there's this white cat there, and she stops and she knows she wants to take this cat home. And she doesn't care about finishing the race anymore. So she puts the cat on her back and rides to where the next checkpoint is and gets right home. And she still has that cat, and she credits me as being the cat's godfather, which is wonderful. But she was on our list as a potential person to follow for The Last Dam, because she has such an interesting story. Also, her connection to the event is a very strong one. She worked hard for years to try to complete it, beyond the cat year. And finally, after several attempts, found the finish line, which was a huge milestone for her. And I remember her crossing that line. I'll never forget. It was a big moment for me as well, just to see how she had she had changed, and seeing that look of accomplishment. So anyway, just as an example, that's the type of person that we find. And I mean, again, I come across individuals in various rides, and I've met a lot of wonderful people even outside of actually being on a bike with them. One of the people that we follow is actually a Minneapolis musician, who I know more, as much at this point now, through his music as I do him on a bike. So again, all kinds of people, all different walks of life. And what it kind of shows, or what we try to show our audiences, is that anyone can do this. And it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be, your athlete, but you can be, a server at a restaurant. You can be a truck driver. You can be an electrician, and you can still go out and do these remarkable things. And it can really be an enriching thing within your life. And the community that is involved is such a wonderful thing to be a part of. And I know that's a big attractant to the whole scene as well. A little bit there, but that's a little bit of an example as to how we find and select individuals to follow.
Gravel cycling community is one of the greatest things I've experienced in my time. I've been a filmmaker or a video producer my entire life, and I've kind of been all over and met tons of people. And the gravel cycling scene or community is so friendly, so inviting. Like, they want you to be out there. They will cheer you on in your ride. There's competition, of course. Maybe it's competition to be to the front, or competition with yourself to, achieve your goal. But that competition does not in any way try to exclude or diminish anyone else's ride. It's really an amazing experience.
They're helping each other, so someone's riding along next to somebody else who's having a hard day, and there's I think more compassion and support than there is competition in the field, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I did notice that when watching the film. I will say it was really great to see some of those people that I just kind of saw as like everyday individuals, and I ended up rooting for them come the end of your film. And I'm forgetting the name of that elderly gentleman, but
John Jarvis. John Jarvis.
Thank you, John Jarvis. He by far was the one that I was like rooting for to finish, because he kept track of him at the gas stations he'd stop at, where he picked up some water, some food, and you could tell he was struggling, but he didn't give up on it. And I think he made it there within 5 minutes of you all concluding the dam event?
Yes, I think he came across, or he comes around the corner. You see his light entering Gary at 6 minutes to go. So he is right at the very end of the time frame.
Man, that was amazing to see. In fact, if I didn't know any better, it would seem like something you'd see at the end of a feel-good movie,
That's awesome.
But I do want to dive a little more into the dam event and how it came to be, right? You did it on your own. What was the process in making it something that a bunch of people got involved in?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So created on my own, again, to experience by myself. Had friends say, you need to put this out there in the world for others to experience. And it was interesting because I'd put on an event called the Filthy 50, which Nick mentioned earlier. It's a 50-mile gravel road cycling event in southeastern Minnesota, and I'd done that for years. And that's essentially you ride, I'll say a loop, a 50-mile loop, right? You start and you finish in the same place. You're not really ever very far from civilization. This was something entirely different. Put on an event and shepherd what started off as 150 and ended up being 500 people across an entire state, point to point, is logistically a little bit more of a challenge, as you can imagine. So, lots of challenges along the way, but ultimately a lot of reward, and just completely worth it watching how this event changes our riders for the better.
All right, and why is it that this was, for the name of the film, why was it your last event? What was making it the last one?
So now we joke and we say the last one, meaning like the last one before the next one, because the dam is coming back here in 2024. But yeah, it was actually going to be the final running of the Day Across Minnesota back in 2021. And the reason being is both myself as well as my co-director, Eric England, we both have teenage children and in their early mid-teens. And after putting on an event like this, which frankly takes a lot of energy and a lot of time from a race director, or a duo of race directors in our case, we decided that, our families need us elsewhere for the coming years, and we'll put this thing on hold. And we never really stopped putting it out there. We stopped running a mass start event. We actually moved it to a virtual event for a while, so people could go out and ride it. They could send us proof of their start and their finish, and essentially a digital file along the way. And we could record their effort and their time in a results file on our website, which got a little bit of traction, but really not as much as we thought it might, based on the interest in the mass start. And really, it kind of highlights the interest that people have in that community, right? They want to be there with people. They want to be experiencing this alongside of 499 other individuals who are out there trying to accomplish this thing at the same time that they're trying to accomplish it. So anyway, Eric and I, we set some time aside for our families, and we started to miss the dam a little bit, missing that weekend of sleep deprivation and driving across the state together. Long story short, this last year, my youngest son, he asked me, what do you think about bringing the Day Across Minnesota back? And I said, well, we stopped doing it because, we wanted to spend more time together with you all. And he's like, well, what if you brought it back and we were part of it? So really that's the reason it came back, is the kids wanted it to come back and they want to be a part of it this year. So it's a pretty exciting thing for us and our families.
Do you plan to do it with your kids then?
Someday. They're not quite old enough, even though they're both into cycling, where they want to bite something off like 240 miles of gravel. Maybe someday, and that's kind of a dream of mine, honestly. I would love to be able to line up there, whether it's a mass start event or whether it's just the three of us and ride across the state with them. So anyway, that would be a dream, but maybe someday. We'll see.
All right. Well, why don't we talk a little more about this future event coming up? What do you know what time it's going to happen? Do you have a day set?
Yeah. So traditionally, we've run the dam in early to mid-August, and this year it happens to be on August 10th. So what'll happen is on Friday, August 9th, and actually the days prior, because we have people coming in from all over the United States, and I think a few people from overseas as well. People will start showing up in Gary, South Dakota. We'll have our check-in event on Friday afternoon, evening on the 9th, and then people will kind of hang out. And when I say that, it's some people are, setting up tents in the front of the Buffalo Ridge Resort in Gary, South Dakota. The people are bringing camper vans. People are trying to get a little bit of rest prior to our midnight start. So that's a big part about the Day Across Minnesota. We have a midnight start, so you ride midnight to midnight. Once that clock strikes midnight and it's all of a sudden, August 10th, we have a big fireworks display that goes off and people start riding. And again, they have 24 hours to get to Hager City in our finish line there on Trenton Island. Now, there is a subset of individuals that will, and for various reasons, turn around when they meet that 240-mile finish line in Hager City, and they'll ride all the way back to Gary on a different route that parallels the one that they were just on. So at the end of 2 days, so 48 hours, the double dam finishers, that's what we call them, they're doing the double dam, they'll have approximately 495 miles on the odometer for the weekend. And that's a lot of miles of gravel. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of preparation that goes into that. It's a lot of mental fortitude as well, as one might imagine. So we'll be there at the Hager City double dam finish line, just like we're at the Gary, South Dakota double dam finish line, just like we're at the Hager City Dam finish line to greet them. And that's one of the most rewarding parts of the weekend.
That is, man, this sounds like a great event. I'm honestly can't wait to see it happen. Let's say someone who's listening wants to get involved with the next dam. What would they have to do to get involved in it, and what would you recommend for them?
Great question. If they'd like to volunteer, we have volunteer opportunities. They can email thedayacrossminnesota@gmail.com, and we can hook them up with a volunteer opportunity. And I will say volunteers can be anything from helping folks out as they cross our finish line in Hager City. If they have a particular skill, if they're great with the camera and they want to be a photographer on the course, we can set them up with opportunity and locations to go out and do that. There are all kinds of things that people have contributed in the past. So email thedayacrossminnesota@gmail.com and we can get you connected there. Also, something that's interesting, there's a Facebook group that somebody created, and it's a dam rider thing and has been for years. But there's a Day Across Minnesota Facebook group where people will reach out and they try to find a support crew. And what that means is they need people to help them on the 240-mile route, 3 different points along the course, to be there with a vehicle, to be there with the supplies that they think they need to continue moving forward, and also sometimes to extract them from the course if they have a mechanical or physically their bodies are failing, all kinds of various reasons. So there are opportunities for support crews, and really the best way to engage the community and find out who needs support is going to that Day Across Minnesota Facebook group, which I believe is fairly searchable. You should be able to search and find that on Facebook.
And if people want to actually take part in the dam, as in, cycling across Minnesota, what would they have to do?
Yeah, so you must be registered to ride, and our registration for the dam opened in early January this year, and filled up within, I want to say 4 hours. So there are no more openings for this year's event. But for next year's event, I'd say keep an eye on our website, the-dam.com, for more information, or follow us on social media. And given the interest in the event, I'd say put it on the calendar, the registration date on the calendar, and make sure that you're signed in to Bike Reg and ready to sign up as soon as it goes live, because it sells out pretty fast.
And what are the social medias? Are they the same thing, or?
It should be, I think we're the Day Across Minnesota for both Facebook as well as Instagram. Those are the 2 platforms that we were on. We were called the Dam on Facebook at one point, but Mark Zuckerberg's algorithm didn't like that. He made us change it to the Day Across Minnesota. So, we thought it was kind of funny.
Well, if I'm being completely honest, when I first saw the film, or when I was reading about it, it took me a while to realize it stood for Day Across Minnesota. I thought it was called The Last Dam because that's what people would be yelling if they took part in it. It
is, yeah.
It's a trial.
You're not wrong.
But I do have one more question. Let's say so people missed the mark for this year, but they're looking forward to next year. They want to take part in it. What would you recommend they start doing now to prepare for it?
Oh, as far as preparation for it?
Yeah, preparation, maybe like, even if things as simple as, start riding your bike around town or something, and just,
Yep. Yeah, I would say first things first, understand that it's a gravel road cycling event. So your basic road bike probably isn't the right bicycle for attempting the Day Across Minnesota. You're going to want something with a little wider tire. If you go into a local bike shop and say, hey, I'm interested in a gravel bike, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And if you're kind of in the upper Midwest and you say, hey, I'm looking to attempt the Day Across Minnesota or the Dam, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And they'll help you find the right bike for you. You can also, of course, search online if you're looking for a used bicycle or a direct shop that sells them online. But I'd recommend talking to somebody. You're going to get the best service through your local bike shop. So do that. Make sure you got the right rig that's going to be helpful. Also, I'd say, start riding. Start riding a lot. Putting in miles in the saddle is important. You can imagine not many can go, we'll say, couch to dam and complete the event. I know people have and have tried, but definitely miles in the legs, miles in the saddle are very, very important. Also, learn about your equipment and how to fix it out there if it were to fail on you. Also, learn how to drink and eat on the bike while you're riding. I think those are really, really important things to do. If you're not continuously fueling your body for, between, I guess the fastest would be around 12, but 24 hours of strenuous exercise, your body will say no more, and you'll end up stopping and what we call bonking. But that'll happen to you. So just start learning how to eat and drink while you're out there riding.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for taking part in this interview. I think it went really well.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much.
A huge thanks to Trenton Raygor and Nicholas Kapanke, as well as the organizers of the Frozen River Film Festival 2024, for making this episode possible. To check out more of the event itself, go to ffrf.org. To check out more of their work, go to checkpointzerofilms.com. I'm Abby Hawkey, and for more conversations on art, tune in to Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. For podcasts of Artbeat and other KQAL original programming, go to kqal.org.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.